We are really excited, and we hope that with those 2 days of festival, you all had really great insights on the Sustainable Development Goals. So we are here together for an hour, and we hope you're ready to be part also of the session and to hear about our amazing speakers on how business can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. So we already mentioned that this session was part of a wider festival, but we hope you enjoyed already so far. And just as a quick reminder, since this is some of you are attending through the Zoom link, but some others are actually watching us from a broadcast, and we're really happy to have them. So please just note that since for those that are part of Zoom, by being on the Zoom, you consent to your image and audio being broadcasted, and you will have the details of this, the regulation and how this is happening that is going to be shared in the chat right now. So without waiting further, I will be very happy to start talking about who we are actually with myself, Neila Benamra from BLab Europe, but also Lucy Mwegai from BLab East Africa. We are both working from a network that is called BLab, that is a worldwide network and that is aiming to change the economic system in which we are operating. We have colleagues and movement builders all around the world, in Europe, in Africa, representing here, but also in America, in the United States, in Latin America. And what we are doing, so you will see what we're doing with all these different entities is that, as I said, we're a system change economy and organization. So if you look at the next slide, you will see that our vision is those of an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system for all people and the planet. That may seem quite ambitious, and we hope that is actually something that resonates with most of you. And to tell you more about how we are conducting this type of change and the activities that we are already doing, you will see in the next slides that we usually translate this system change into 3 main changes. The first one being behavioral change and how we can help companies and business understand its impact on all stakeholders, measuring this impact, but also taking action to improve its impacts. Cultural change as well, understanding what are the expectations and the role of business in society today. And the last one, which is actually very important as well, is legal change, structural change, in order to adapt the legal frameworks and making sure that once behaviors and culture have been aligned, the structure itself will allow businesses to behave in such a way to bring that vision, what we have just stated before. So looking at the next slide, you will also see that what we have been doing since the beginning of this organization was built 13 years ago was to play around those 3 different types of changes that we have just mentioned, by either making market infrastructure that enable this behavioral change, building a community of some type of company you may already have heard before, that I call B Corps. So B Corps are certified companies that are using business as a force for goods, and that I have like almost 4,000 companies that are certified today and helping to bring this change for a better economy and society for us all. We also create tools to help companies go through that type of transformation to assess their impacts, but also that is all being used by hundreds actually of thousands of companies today, and we're very happy to see that there is momentum happening in order to help to solve societal challenge, but also to make the society better again. We also do a lot of communications, as we talked about culture and behavioral change, in order to help to bring this new type of narrative to be on the top of agendas of all decision makers, and to make sure that this change will happen effectively. So as you can see, it's a lot of work, and we're very happy to also have together today some great speakers that are going to present to you also how it looks like actually from a company side. And what you will see in the next slide, and that will be presented by my great colleague from East Africa, Lucy Mwegai, is one of the tools that I've just mentioned to be able to measure your impact. Lucy, up to you.
Thank you, Neila. Thank you for that great introduction. So the Sustainable Development Goals provide a framework to support organizations in all sectors shift from profit-driven to sustainability-driven businesses. Sustainable development ensures organizations take into account how current decisions impact longevity, future generations, and the stability of the environment in which they operate. So in the next slide, despite there being considerable progress to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, we are not doing enough fast enough. There are still millions of people living in extreme poverty. The huge economic gender gap still remains and are likely to become exacerbated unless addressed now. Everywhere around the globe, we can feel the effects of climate change, destabilizing the Earth's temperature, equilibrium, and has far-reaching effects on human beings and the planet. Next slide. While the SDGs are considered to provide a framework that will help the global economy to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure a shared and durable prosperity for all, businesses are still falling short of contributing despite a recognized role to act. From a CEO study conducted by the UN Global Compact and Accenture in 2016, 78% of the CEOs saw opportunity to contribute to the SDGs through their core business. Compared to in 2019, only 48% of the CEOs interviewed SDGs were actually implementing, as businesses implementing sustainability into their operations at that time. Next slide. Our insights show that awareness for the Sustainable Development Goals was high among companies, but they lack the tools and direction to get started and take action. With this in mind, B-Lab and the United Nations Global Compact developed the SDG Action Manager, a free web-based confidential impact management solution that enables businesses to take action on the Sustainable Development Goals through 2030. The SDG Action Manager brings together B-Lab's B Impact Assessment, the 10 principles of the United Nations Global Compact, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This will enable businesses take meaningful action through dynamic self-assessment, benchmarking, and improvements. The SDG Action Manager has been informed by the work and feedback of a range of stakeholders, including experts in corporate sustainability, civil society, the UN, and academia. It is inspired by the certified B Corp community and participating companies of the United Nations Global Compact. The SDG Action Manager was launched in January 2020 and is available in English, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. And we currently have over 15,000 users globally. Next slide. With the SDG Action Manager, you will learn which SDGs matter most to your business based on your organization's profile. You will be able to get a clear view of how your operations, supply chain, and business model create a positive impact and identify risk areas for each SDG. And you're also able to share your impact with your stakeholders. You will be able to set goals and track your progress and improvement towards incorporating sustainable business practices. You can invite your colleagues to join the SDG Action Manager and contribute. They can contribute their expertise as your whole team learns in every step. And lastly, your organization shall join a global movement of companies working to build a better world for people and planet by 2030. Next slide. As we have now understood the theory behind the SDG Action Manager, we now have two leaders who will explain to us how they've incorporated the Sustainable Development Goals into their business. We shall start off with Mr. John Nyangwecha from Aqua Clara, Kenya. Over to you, John.
All right, thank you, Lucy. Thank you also, Nila, for that wonderful introduction. So as mentioned, my name is John Nyangwecha. I'm the CEO of a company called Aqua Clara, Kenya, which is a big corp, one of the organizations that you've heard both Lucy and Nila refer to. So if we could move to the next slide. So a little bit about Aqua Clara, Kenya. So we are a social enterprise that was founded in Kenya in the year 2009. And we work across East Africa. specifically looking at access to safe drinking water. I believe everybody that is here today can appreciate the fact that not everybody in the world has safe drinking water. And when you don't have access to this very basic need, you're going to have a lot of challenges. And so as an organization, we're really set up to look at this. As you will see in the next slide, we have three main areas that we focus on when it comes to looking at SDGs. So the first one, as I've mentioned, clean water and sanitation, which is SDG number 6, is central to how we operate and the mission that we have as an organization, which is to ensure that everybody, wherever people live, especially in East Africa, they have access to safe drinking water. And specifically in rural communities across this side of the world, as well as peri-urban communities, so where we have slums in the major cities, you'll find that access to safe drinking water is a major, major challenge. And that has been exacerbated by the fact that population is growing. And with this population density, you have sanitation that is not being handled safely, and that ends up contaminating the water sources. And so we set up to solve this problem by providing solutions, as you will see in the second picture there on the slide, solutions that are inexpensive, solutions that communities can afford. And when they have these solutions, they can take the water that is available to them, and using the water filters, for example, what you see in the photo there, they're able to convert this water readily and make it safe for their drinking. That then cuts across to other SDGs. If you look up SDG number 13, which deals with climate action, because people have been boiling their water for many years. Boiling water using firewood or charcoal has been one of the ways that we are emitting carbon dioxide, which is leading to climate change. And so when people are able to replace this boiling practice by using water filters, we are seeing also that is creating an impact on our climate as well. So if we go to the next slide, based on the brief description I've given about the products we have, specifically the water filters that we are providing to households and schools, we've been able to support around 173,000 people within communities to have access to safe drinking water through these water filters. And this has led to a reduction of waterborne diseases by 37% in the areas that we work. But one of the other key ways that is central to how we work is to create employment as we distribute these products. And so as we work with communities, the idea is that we train youth and women, with around 80% of our distribution team being women, to be able to promote these products. And as they promote these products, they are able to increase their income. Many of them are people that rely on small businesses. Some of them are farmers. And this becomes an additional revenue stream for them. And based on this, we've been able to increase income of the workforce that we have by at least 25%. As you will see in the next slide as well, one of the other impacts that we've been able to generate is a reduction of carbon dioxide, as I mentioned, and specifically 192,000 tons of carbon dioxide have been reduced by us replacing boiling with water filters. Every single day, we have around 1.2 million liters that are being generated by use of our filters. And this is water that is being consumed by low-income households that are living in rural communities, school children, and this is preventing waterborne diseases. And as a result of the operation that we have created 18 full-time jobs, and that is continuing, as well as 210 part-time jobs. And the idea for us is that as we continue within the next 3 years, we are able to provide safe drinking water to 1 million people and create at least 3,000 employment opportunities, with the vast majority of that going to the women that we are training to distribute these products. And so from our standpoint, and we'll get to go a bit deeper into some of the ways we're impacting the communities we work on SDGs, But at this point, that is just a brief introduction of Aqua Clara Kenya and what we do.
That's yeah, I think it's that's a great job, John, and then beautiful work in Aqua Clara. So I'm Anne-Sophie Goujon. I'm the Group Sustainable Development Manager for Bonduelle. And first of all, I would like to say that I'm very happy to be here, and I would like to thank BLab Europe for the invitation and opportunity to share about our positive impact and SDG journey at Bonduelle. So for those who don't know Bonduelle, we are a plant-based food manufacturer that was created in 1853 in France. It's a family-run business with strong social values and a particular connection to the land that diversified their business around frozen, canned, and fresh plant-based products. And we have the noble ambition to become a certified B Corp by 2025 for the whole group. Here on the slide, you have some figures for an overview of the group. Regarding the Sustainable Development Goals, as a general observation, we can agree that changing our food system to become sustainable and resilient is a powerful and smart way to realize progress toward achieving many, if not all, SDGs. What food we produce matters, how we produce food matters, and what we eat matters. And currently, our food production and dietary choices are impacting our health and our environment in downward and interlinked spirals of increasing malnutrition, diet-related and foodborne diseases, biodiversity loss, climate change, and destruction of ecosystems. This is, well, a gloomy picture that changes for different geographies, but nevertheless is a gloomy picture everywhere. This is an observation that we've made at Bonduelle, and we want to make sure that we play our part as a sustainable, responsible business. This is why we reformulated our mission recently and locked in our company status. In French, it's called a raison d'être, or purpose, and it is to inspire the transition toward a plant-based diet to contribute to people's well-being and planet health. Basically, among the universal definition of what the world needs, summarizing those 17 SDGs, we believe that Bonduelle can have an impact in ensuring that our food production and consumption becomes environmentally sustainable, which refers to SDG number 12, and also have a positive contribution in feeding people sustainably, that's SDG number 2, while respecting the planetary boundaries that refers to SDG 13th, 14th, and 15th. Those are probably the main ones. And of course, indirectly, we can contribute to all SDGs through the B Corp certification, as Lucy explained. So as we go and progress in our B Corp journey, our contribution to the SDGs will become stronger and stronger. We've made a switch by this pledge, even if Bonduelle has been recognized as a sustainable player for years, to put positive impact at the heart of our long-term and business strategy.
Thank you so much to both of you. I hope you are at the audience as excited as we are with Lucy to have John and Anne-Sophie talking about the impact of their company and also saying how they're concretely taking action for it. And after this short presentation, because there's so much more to be said, we will actually go now into a panel discussion. And as I said at the very beginning, if you remember, I said this session will be a little more dynamic and we would expect some answers from you. So we actually have polling questions for you to answer in a way to make it even more concrete for you to see what this tool, the SDG Action Manager, look like. We have prepared 3 polling questions that are extracts from the tool itself. The first one should be appearing in a few seconds and you will be able to answer. So we will start with a few focuses on each SDG. So the first one that we are going to focus on is the SDG number 2. And the SDG number 2 may not be the SDG that will be the focus of many companies. So the question is helping you to understand what does it mean to actually contribute to that SDG throughout your business model. So you have a few different answers that you can choose. Please select all the answers that are relevant for your company or organization. If you also work in international development, that can work. And then we will see the results at the end of it. And while you are answering, I can see that it is already moving around. I will actually ask the question to our panelists before I show the answers of it. And asking first to Anne-Sophie, actually, since you mentioned that the SDG number 2 was one of the focus for Bonduelle, did you learn something new using the SDG Action Manager related to that specific SDG?
Sure. Well, first of all, for a non-expert or non-sustainable development specialist, the SDGs can be perceived as something too complicated to reach or quite vague, or internal players can wonder how concretely a multinational company can contribute to them. At Bonduelle, we've identified the need to educate on what is behind the SDGs and where we already contribute, even if it's a small action. What is interesting to observe is that by digging into one macro goal, we can learn what is behind each SDG. I will give you a concrete example. When we worked on the mission statement and strategic impact priorities, of our top leaders didn't see clearly the contribution we could have on zero hunger, so the SDG number 2, because they asked, is it really our responsibility to fight for food security? And by exploring more this goal, they discovered that Bonduelle was already contributing to it through providing healthy and nutritious food, and also to that all of our action in promoting an alternative agricultural model has also a significant impact on this goal. And on the collective action that we can have on this particular goal, it is not fully finalized yet, but we are currently working on our community investment and civic engagement policy, where we want to create the space to enhance employee participation in the mission, and where we want to explore what are the potential partnerships we can create to boost our impact. It would probably involve taking a role in our communities around access to plant-based food, education to the need of plant-based, and impact measurement on the benefit of plant-based from a health point of view.
Thank you for sharing that testimonial, Anne-Sophie. And from what I'm hearing, there are so many insights already from what you shared, from the fact that indeed this language may not be always easy to understand from companies because they have been defined at an institutional level, even though I also often like to remind that the process of creating the SDGs was actually quite unprecedented, because up to 1 million people were involved in the construction of them, and from all different parties and stakeholders. So it's the first time that we have such a common goal that is uniting all of us, but still it's not easy to see which role we can all play at a different level. So I'm happy to see that with the tool, it has helped to at least educate and understand better what is behind that goal. And you talked also about the responsibility, which is also something that is interesting, because even though I saw in the chat there was one question linked to it, but governments are accountable for the achievement of those goals. But we also realize from what Lucy shared before that if we do not all play a role in that, we will never be able to achieve them. So we all have an impact, and whether we measure it or not. And those that do measure it and manage it better then are contributing to make those goals more realistic and closer for us. And also, since you mentioned this idea of SDGs being interconnected, John, would you maybe let us know, in your case, even though the main SDG you're contributing is the number 6, but do you have any link maybe that you have discovered with that SDG number 2 as well?
Yeah, that's been what's been interesting really, is that we have spent a lot of time zeroing down on SDG number 6, which we are set up to look at, clean water and sanitation. But then looking at the tool, we realize that we have such interconnectedness between the different SDGs. For us specifically, 70% of the customers we serve are farmers. Because we're working in rural communities, a lot of them are, generating their income from their small farms. And what we've learned is that when these farmers have access to safe drinking water, they're healthier. A lot of them have been able to increase even their output in the farm, just because they're not spending any days being sick, and that translates to them improving their own food security, and that translates to them having even enough food to sell in the market. And so for us, I think that's been quite interesting to see that when we open our eyes to all these SDGs, we realize that whereas, yes, SDG number 6 will always remain the key SDG we're looking at, there are so many other areas that we are actually impacting the communities that we serve. And we might as well then start measuring it. because this impact is being generated anyway. Why not track it? Why not be intentional about it? Why not set targets on how we can, improve the lives of the farmers that we work with? And by improving their lives, then that translates to SDG number 2 for sure.
Thank you, John, for specifying this. And I hope with the audience, you can see also the difference, because it's not just about also the size of a company, because here we have 2 speakers representing two different profiles of companies. And you can see how they're both contributing actually to this goal in very different ways at their own level, but still contributing. And as John said, we are all having an impact, and this systemic aspect is not so easy sometimes to grasp. But we're living in an interdependent world. We're all interdependent and interconnected, and because it is a system after all. So it's actually interesting to see how it's being translated into reality. So if we see, maybe we show the results of the poll now. I hope it will happen magically, thanks to my really amazing colleague that is on backstage. So you can see here that most of you actually do not contribute directly throughout your business model to the SDG number 2, which is actually not surprising, because again, that's not the most common one. But we also saw that in the way that you're contributing, a few of you are actually contributing either directly with your product or services, or contributing in the way your business model is being shaped to be able to support further smallholder farms in your supply chain, or also to support technical community farmers. And I also hope that by answering this poll, you understand better the mindset behind it, that the contribution can take very multiple shapes. Now let's get to the next topic. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are. And I will let Lucy present the next session.
Thank you, Nila. Thank you so much. Now we're going to dive deeper on SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. And another polling question will appear on your screen. Please complete it and let us know how your organization's business model is contributing to this SDG. Yes, please continue. Yes, thank you. And as the poll is continuing, I'll just go straight to John. John, you had already touched on this earlier, that Aqua Clara Kenya is contributing heavily towards SDG 6. So please expound to us on how your business model is contributing to SDG 6. Thanks, John.
Yeah, great question. Maybe just a bit of context. So this is a big problem, as I mentioned in my presentation. And there's been very many attempts to address this problem. And as you can imagine, there are many models that exist on how we can ensure that everybody has access to safe drinking water. For many years across the continent, and certainly in Kenya and other parts of East Africa, access to safe drinking water has been addressed by charities. The idea being that if we raise money, we can go back to the rural communities where people don't have money, and we can provide these solutions. But after many millions of dollars being poured into this sector, we have not come any closer to ensuring that everybody has access to safe drinking water. And so when we were set up, it was with the intention that there has to be a better way. There has to be a way that even the people we consider really poor can contribute to this problem as well, that they can own the solution. And that then leads to a more sustainable way of ensuring that everybody has access to safe drinking water. And so rather than continuing that trend of, let's donate these products to these people because they can't afford them, we chose the hard route, because we thought that if we can convince these communities, these households that are living at the base of the pyramid, these schools that are really remote, to commit their resources, whatever these resources are, to solving this problem, then they will be able to utilize these solutions a bit better, and we can have a long-term solution that will solve this problem once and for all. And so in our business model, the idea is that we support communities through partnerships with microfinance institutions. Like I said, 70% of our customers are farmers, whereas these farmers are not able to pay for these products in one installment. they belong to these cooperatives where they take their produce. So if it's dairy farmers, they are part of a dairy cooperative. If it's tea farmers, they are part of a tea cooperative. And so by partnering with their cooperatives, we're able to stretch that payment so that instead of paying for a water filter in one installment, and a water filter will cost about $40, we are able to spread that over 6 months. And that then ensures that they take full ownership of this solution, and they are able to look at it as their investment. But that also puts pressure on us, because then we have to convince them that this is a valuable investment for you, and we have to have that conversation. Why do you need to invest in these solutions? And what we are seeing, even though the takeoff is a bit slow, is that the people that end up with solutions by buying filters, for example, from us, they will use this filter to its end life. And when that comes, they will purchase another product. And that for us is a win, because then it means that we are addressing this problem sustainably. Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. And I love the way you mentioned, this was actually a problem, an issue that was being resolved by charities before, until Aquaclara and such organizations came in. And this actually just shows that, the problems that we have, the social and economic problems that are here, can also be solved by businesses being part of the solution. Because before, it was only, NGOs and charities that were having this conversation. But more and more, if the whole ecosystem, the companies, the governments, all of us, if we're all in this conversation, trying to see how can business be used as a force for good, how can we be more sustainable, and being as a business, not thinking only about making money, but thinking about now how what impact you have on society and the environment. You are also able to solve these solutions. You are also able to give these rural communities work, and also, empower them. So thank you so much, John, for that really great conversation about, your business model and how it's contributing to SDG 6. And Sophie, I'd like you to expound on how Bonduelle is contributing to SDG 6 through your internal operations.
Yeah, so before I answer, I just want to say that great job to John, and it's amazing the work that Aquaclara is doing. It's very inspiring. So we contribute to this goal through operations, like when we evaluate the water risk at factory and farm level, when we monitor our water usage and set reduction targets, again, at factory and farm level. We have a role to play in helping the farmers we work with develop techniques and innovate to be more resilient in terms of water usage. And our impact can also be evaluated through the change in people's diet. For example, if we manage to have a certain number of beneficiaries to switch their daily intake of meat, dairy product, and junk food, then the overall water impact of their food would actually be lowered. Well, I'm not saying that we should stop consuming meat, and this is not what Bonduelle advocates for either, but if we look at the figures, for example, we need 15,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of meat, while we need 5,000 liters to produce 1 kilo of lentil. So dietary shifts are one of the solutions to preserve water resources as well.
Thank you so much, Anne-Sophie. And what Sophie and John have shown us is, you can contribute to the SDGs, not only through your business model, but also through what you do on a day-to-day basis. In your operations, you can actually be creating the positive impact that is actually going to help you work towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm now going to end the poll. And we're sharing the poll results. And as SDG 2, most of you are not sure or not contributing towards SDG 2, which is great, but the whole idea of this exercise is to show you the type of questions that you're going to experience when you actually come across the SDG, when you start using the SDG Action Manager to help you think through your business model and also operations and how you're able to improve from where you currently are. I'll now hand over to my colleague Nila to move on to the next question.
I was waiting to see if you had something else to say or not. So that's already two topics we have covered, two SDGs, the number 2 and the number 6. And as you have already heard also from what Anne-Sophie and John were talking about, and Lucy as well just right now, there are multiple ways to contribute at different levels. And in the SDG Action Manager, what you would see is that it's being broken down into 4 main perspectives. So you will see the business, how to contribute through your business model, how to contribute through your internal operations, how to contribute through your supply chain, but also collective actions. And you've actually already heard bits on those different topics when Anne-Sophie was mentioning about the work, the advocacy work that they're doing about educating people on the benefits of plant-based foods, or understanding as well how John is working together with the different members of his community and also part of a collective action work. So what I would like now to help you illustrate how this could look like, not just in terms of the company scope itself, but also if we extend the scope to the value chain of the company, because we already mentioned now farmers, consumers, but also the life cycle of the product itself. What does it look like to contribute to those SDGs? And if we take now an SDG that is actually more famous, in a way, where companies are contributing more is the SDG number 13, climate action. And why is it more popular? In the sense that we actually all contribute to it, either positively and most of the time negatively. And it's also an SDG that is concerning, that is related to all of us. So no polling question for this one. We will have another polling question for the other one. But asking first Anne-Sophie, on Bonduelle example, how do you contribute throughout your whole scope to that specific SDG on climate action?
Sure. Well, the food system is one of the main drivers of global greenhouse gas emissions and accounts for roughly 27%, which is approximately 14 gigatons. And in order to keep global warming below 2 degrees and aiming for 1.5, we need rapid decarbonization of all sectors by 2050. This means halving global emissions every decade until 2050, while at the same time massively increasing carbon sinks to begin achieving negative emissions near mid-century. And at Bonduelle, we can contribute through 3 levers. The first one is by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, so at scope 1, 2, and 3, and we are contemplating, even if it's not fully public yet, to contribute to carbon neutrality by 2050. To train and embark the farmers we work with. That's the second one, to train and embark the farmers we work with, to develop regenerative farming techniques and store carbon in soils. And the last lever is again related to our mission statement, to inspire dietary shift toward plant-based. Again, I will share some figures to illustrate. Red meat and dairy currently account for just over half of the total global food-related greenhouse gas emissions. So that's 7.4 of the 14 gigatons that I mentioned. And shifting to a flexitarian diet would reduce these emissions to around 2.9 gigatons, for example. Of course, this has to be balanced with the average meat consumption of each country and their eating habits, but globally plant-based diets is part of the solution to live within the carbon budget of the food system. So this is typically an example of collective action where Bonduelle can play a role in helping people change and embark in the transition toward plant-based.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. And this is so powerful to see how, again, we're all playing a role in that. And even though we go outside of a company's scope itself, but there is indeed an impact and a responsibility and a role that multinational like Bonduelle can play in indeed working collaboratively with its consumers to be able to have this positive impact on society in the end. Even though the business model is not impact driven, a bit different from Aqua Clara, but we can see that in all cases, there are always ways to contribute because, as John said before, we have an impact already. And since I'm mentioning Aqua Clara now, John, maybe can you let us know a little bit more about how, as Aqua Clara, even though it was not like the business model itself, but how are you contributing actually to that SDG number 13?
Yeah, so, like I mentioned, most of our customers are rural folks, so farmers that live in their rural home, and the typical practice for those that have some basic awareness about waterborne diseases, the typical practice is for them to boil that water, and the means that are available to them is to use firewood and charcoal, as I mentioned in the presentation. And this has two problems. So first, there is the emission of greenhouse gases, which cause climate change. And there is an even more immediate problem that they are aware of, which is indoor air pollution. So as they boil their water, there is a lot of smoke that is being emitted, and they're ingesting this smoke. And as we set out to solve this problem of access to safe drinking water, we realized that there were these other unintended benefits from our customers using our product. And very early on, I think that was about 2 years into operation, we realized that we could actually document these benefits, and we set out to be part of the carbon credits scheme that I'm sure some of us are aware of, where we are able to really track how much carbon emission is being prevented at the household level. And we realized that if we're able to track that and package that, we could sell that as a product, which will then generate revenue for us. And as a social enterprise, that revenue has been quite useful to then reinvest it in training these communities and extending the operation to be able to reach a lot more people. And so by targeting SDG number 6, we ended up doing a lot of work on SDG number 13. And we've been able then to build a business model on both SDGs. We are generating money by selling water filters, but because we are targeting people that live typically on less than $5, our profit margin is not so large, but we make up for that by selling carbon credits. And the communities are educated about climate change. They're able to move sometimes even to clean energy. So not just the water filters, they're able to replace the firewood they're using with other renewable energy sources. And that has been able to not only transform them at their household level, but as well transform our business model and enable us to expand to levels that we perhaps would not have been able to do without targeting SDG number 13 as well.
Thanks, John. And I'm so amazed at your entrepreneur skills, like finding here the opportunities and making something out of it and solving at the same time societal issues that you're meeting around you. It's so interesting to also see from both you and Anne-Sophie actually this skill that is now more and more required from new type of leaders, this systemic thinking, always understanding that we are part of a system and that our actions are all connected to each other, but also this empathy that I can feel in both of you, but they are very inspiring. And I hope the audience is also seeing that. And now we're going to move to the last poll question that Lucy will introduce to you.
Thank you, Nila. So we have talked about positive impact, but to effectively contribute to the SDGs, we have to understand that impact can also be negative. And the companies measuring it, they can better mitigate it. In the SDG Action Manager, this is formalized with a risk assessment. So a polling question will now appear on your screen that asks whether your organization has identified any potential risks in achieving SDG 14, life below water. So please, audience, please answer the question as I go straight to John. John, are there any risks that Aqua Clara has identified in achieving SDG 14, and how have you been able to mitigate them?
Yeah, so we have the products that I mentioned, so the water filters, and one of the materials, the major material actually we use in making this product is plastic. And plastic, because plastic is affordable and we're able to manipulate it to make these products and have them accessible to these communities. And we never thought of this as a problem because, you know, it's a product we are giving it, we are selling it to the community, solving a big problem. Our filter would last, so we have two types of products. There's one that will last around 5 years. There's another one that lasts 10 years. Last year, we actually started seeing a problem that we were not alive to previously. When customers who had bought our filters around 5 years ago came to the end cycle of that product, and they had a lot of plastic waste that we had not, you know, been very intentional about how we were going to manage it. And, you know, it's easy to focus on the positive things and the good things that we are doing, but it was a, you know, wake-up call for us that there are actually certain adverse outcomes from the work that we do, and plastic waste was certainly something that we had to then find a solution for. And with plastic waste, I'm sure we are all aware that, you know, this plastic will end up in so many other places. Plastic is not going to degrade. It's going to be in the environment for, I think, thousands of years. And so what we ended up doing is partnering with a recycling company. And that's one of the important things with this SDG Manager tool, is that you are able to really think about these problems as they happen and set in place solutions for them. And for us, then I think the idea was, let's work with a local recycling company, and our customers, as they're generating this waste, we are able to get this waste back from them. And we work with this recycling company, which then converts them into simple products like a soap dish. And these products are then given back to the customers as an incentive to returning the plastic waste. And so we've now tried to integrate that in our model as well, so that as we provide safe drinking water, we are not affecting other SDGs negatively. And the idea is for us to look at all these other SDGs as well that we may not be focusing on directly, but also mitigate any adverse effects that may be coming from our operation.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for explaining to us. You know, as we all know, plastic is a big risk for most organizations. And I can see even from the poll, that's what most people have chosen. But also the beauty about the SDG Action Manager is to be able to show, you know what, all organizations would want to create a positive impact, but impact can also be negative. And the beauty about the SDG Action Manager, as John has mentioned, it will be able to help you identify or think through what negative impact your business could be having, and how do you mitigate it. Over to you, Anne-Sophie. Please also let us know any risks that Bonjour has identified in achieving SDG 14 and how you've been able to mitigate that.
Thank you. Well, I see two main risks. The first one is packaging, and the second one is through our agricultural farming partners. So the first one, we've been doing a lot of efforts on packaging recyclability, with a public commitment to reach 100% of pack designed to be recyclable and reusable by 2025. And also we want to reach 100% of plastic packaging made with recycled and biosourced material by 2030. So we've been doing a lot of efforts on this, also training, partnering with our supply chain and suppliers. And on the second one, we also contribute to this SDG with our effort in promoting an alternative agricultural model and developing strategies for low usage of chemicals in farming. And for this, we have a very close relationship with the farmers that are actually partners. And we help them develop new techniques. We identify where we have risks, and we try to leverage and help our supply chain towards better farming.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie, for that. And I love the fact that these are two different organizations. Both of them have, as in terms of size, in terms of geographic location, and both of them have been able to use the SDG Action Manager. They've been able to explain to us the risks that they've been able to identify and how to mitigate it. That's the great thing about the tool, that any organization from anywhere around the world would be able to use it as well. As I share the polling results right now, as I had mentioned earlier, most of the attendees identify that they are using a lot of microplastic beads, plastics that are harmful to now marine environment, just as both John and Anne-Sophie had mentioned. I'll now hand over to Nila, who will now take us through the Q&A section.
Thank you all. I hope you're all still enjoying this great session, and we still have a few minutes remaining together. And before we answer some of the questions, just one aspect that I wanted to emphasize with all of you, and that you can see actually with our speakers here, is that when we talk about impact management, is actually a lot about continuous improvements. So we are now explaining, and both Anne-Sophie and John are explaining how we are already contributing, but it's not a matter of just justifying how they're operating their business as it is a status quo and just linking it with SDGs. We hope you also understand that it's, as they said, about measuring their impact and always trying to improve it and finding solutions and ways to always get it to be more and more positive and less negative. So most probably, if we were to talk again in a year from now, maybe 6 months, let's say a year, because Bordeaux is very big to change. I'm sure they would have new stories to tell us about new impact improvement that we would have already implemented by then, with Anne-Sophie leading Bonduelle on that path, and John being such a great entrepreneur and having new ideas on how he could solve new societal issues. So I will move to indeed questions. Some of you have asked us questions in the Q&A. Thank you so much for this. So we will start with the first question that was actually directed to Anne-Sophie, I believe. And the question is to Bonduelle, how did you start the SDG work? How many people were involved initially? So more about the methodology of it.
Yes, there is a before and after the SDG Action Manager, which was really a great tool for this, because before, well, we already had an impact, but we didn't know exactly where, and we actually could see on the SDG Action Manager, even if we're not a certified B Corp yet, that we already contribute to some SDGs, and we actually could see where we could actually improve and so on. And so this was also with our old CSR strategy before also the pledge to become a B Corp. And we shared with this wish to become a B Corp and also the mission statement that was reformulated, we also could shape the CSR or impact strategy that we wanted to have through operations and business model. And for this, we involved external and internal stakeholders. So for internal stakeholders, we created different working groups on how we could progress and improving our B Corp roadmap, but also on the mission statement and actually what it would what we would concretely do with this mission statement in line. We involved 700 people out of 14,500 people that we have in the company. So we had this representative sample that we asked a question. We also tried to make this sample equitable in terms of gender equity, also representative of the different geographies and age and different people that we could have in the company. They could all give feedback on this mission statement and propose concrete actions that we could do. And we also we redid a materiality assessment. It was an update of materiality assessment that we already had, but we did this update with the mission statement also in line to make sure that we could reflect on this mission statement and see where the areas that were most material to the business and where we could minimize risks and maximize opportunities. So for this, we involved many external players to participate in this materiality assessment. And those two combined with internal and external inputs, we could actually shape our impact strategy and make sure that it was relevant to all stakeholders at Bondwell.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie, and I hope it inspires other also multinationals to understand that it is possible to go through that type of transformation, and it's a matter of going step by step and a long process, but still rewarding when we hear your stories and how you're already on your process for certification. For those that are not aware with what a B Corp is, I just mentioned a little bit before, but those are companies that have a stakeholder type of governance. So meaning that they're, as I said, using business as a force for good, but especially creating benefits for all the different type of stakeholders and not only for shareholders. So a long journey for sure. We're gonna go through another question very quickly, and then I would ask a question to John before we are wrapping up with Lucy. One question that was asked, and I wanted to quickly touch upon based on that, is the difference between the SDG Compass that it has been developed by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the SDG Action Manager. I would answer that both are actually very complementary, and we do recommend to use also the SDG Compass. The SDG Compass is giving you more high-level principles on your SDG approach and how you can consider it, while the SDG Action Manager is, once you have defined that approach, helping you to measure your SDG contribution and take action to it, and really like actionable insights that you can get. So highly encouraging you to use both of it for a comprehensive vision. And last question is regarding exchange of best practices among the users of the SDG Action Manager that has been asked. And we do understand also that aspect, because as much as we can share standards that are part of the tool, it's often actually very valuable as well to learn from each other and how it's translated, and which is also one of the reasons we're doing this webinar. But John, would you like maybe to build up upon that question around best practices?
Yeah, and for me, I must say, Nila, I think that's one of my favorite parts of this tool. You know, the fact that as all of us, so like as Anne-Sophie is using this tool with the amazing work that she's doing, she has an opportunity to share, because the tool allows you to share your best practices. You can attach your resources, and that can be very beneficial to other companies wherever they are in the world as they try to figure out how to go about this. So I must say, I think as you start using this tool, it's good for us to learn from what others are doing, but it's also a good opportunity for us to share. So if there's something that I have developed, certainly there's a lot that I've learned, for example, from Anne-Sophie and the way they're working. The tool allows you as the user to share that information, and other companies that may be struggling with a specific question on how to mitigate certain risks can then find that very beneficial. And for me, certainly, I think that's always been the thing I'm looking at. And I think as more and more companies start to use the tool, it only increases in that value, right? Like as more and more companies are using it and they're sharing their best practices, it's going to build such an awesome resource center for different companies that are going to use it as the years go by.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Now, Lucy, up to you.
Thank you so much. As we come to the end of our session, our call to action to you, our audience today, is to register an account on the SDG Action Manager. As you can see, my team has already put the link up, and start taking action towards the Sustainable Development Goals and tracking your progress in incorporating sustainable business practices. Thank you once again for joining our session, and thank you again to our speakers. We really appreciate your insights, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
And a big thank you for the organizing team and for our colleague Bilan that you have seen on the chat that has been supporting us, and also all our comms team that are working in the backstage that you do not see, but that has made this webinar possible as well.